One never brags about one's accomplishments, but one thought that now that the channel has a new name, it's probably the best time to talk about every prediction that turned out to be completely or almost spot on. And it's also better if I stop imitating Cloud Retainer, it's too hard to talk about myself in third person. This video is not gonna be long, and realistically it's more of a way to get my viewers to know that I changed the name of the channel, because I could use my old name and logo in the thumbnail, so that those who still don't know about the change will recognize them and realize that this apparently unknown channel named ShadowXImpact is ShadowX5452 Gaming, but rebranded. Anyway, since there will be some theories in this, I guess I can skip the disclaimer, so this is slightly a theory video. I will use information available in the game, but my theories and conclusions are not to be considered the official lore of the game, unless I got something right and it's confirmed in a later update of the game itself, which essentially is what this video is mainly about. When I decided to make Genshin Impact Theory videos, I never thought that the channel was gonna get anywhere at all. That's how low my expectations were. So I just used the name I've been using since the early 2000s. Originally this channel used to be about art, but I soon realized that for me, art has to remain a hobby or I'll simply hate it. Then I tried with Valorant, thinking that people would enjoy seeing someone going from bad to great, but I had to stop at average because the insults were too many and people just expected Ten's or Masayoshi's performance. Then I ended up on Ashikai's channel by chance, and I liked the idea of researching mythology, religions, cultures and mixing them with gaming, so I tried to do a video on my own. I was terrified to speak and I couldn't stand hearing my voice in my headset while editing, so if you happen to watch my first videos, you'll probably fall asleep. Unexpectedly, my fourth video went kinda viral, but I also realized that this was what I wanted to do, and I've been doing it for almost 3 years now. In these 3 years, I made tons of predictions and speculations, and when some of those predictions ended up being perfectly right, I thought, well, maybe I'm not that dumb. These correct predictions are what we're gonna talk about today. Of course, since the goal of this video is to brag, I won't include the wrong predictions I made because, you know, I'm trying to make myself look good for once in my life. Anyway, we will talk about everything I got right as ShadowX5452 Gaming, and it's gonna be split mainly in 2 chapters, one about Natlan and the other one about the other nations, which is what we're starting with. Well, say hello to ShadowX5452 Gaming one last time, and let's get this video started. Starting with my first and biggest achievement and satisfaction, in the video called The Archons, all 7 Archgetian names, Hypostasis Connection, the one that went viral, I tried to figure out the name of the Dendro Hypostasis before it was released. The video came out on August 20th, 2022, so 2 days before Sumeru was released, but the Dendro Hypostasis came out in 3.2, so 2 months later. The Hypostasis names are letters from the Hebrew alphabet that also work as numbers, so Electro is 1, Anemo 2, Geo 3, Cryo 4, Hydro 5, Dendro was unreleased but Pyro was 16, and that meant that there was something behind those numbers. I tried using everything I could think of, but nothing made sense, until I saw the tarot cards on my shelves, so I tried to see if I could find a connection. In the end, I realized that if you ignore the numbers on the cards, like the Fool is 0, the Magician is 1, the High Priestess is 2, and so on, and you think that the Fool is the first card, the Magician is the second, the High Priestess is the third, everything fell into place. The cards actually describe the Archons. So I read the description of every single tarot card until I found the Lovers. It depicts 2 people, Eve in front of the Tree of Knowledge with the snake on it, Temptation, and Adam in front of the Tree of Life, and this card used to have 2 women and 1 man, so Lilith and Eve, the first and second women created according to the Kabbalah, and Adam. This, together with what the 3.0 livestream said back then, was enough to convince me that this card, number 6 but as before the 7th tarot card, meant that the Dendro Hypostasis was going to be the Hebrew letter for 7, and when 3.2 came out, its name was indeed Zayin, 7. What I didn't realize back then is that I basically also predicted the entire Archon quest. I said that the snake on the tree of knowledge meant temptation, and Irminsul had been corrupted by forbidden knowledge, the power that tempted both Deshret and Kanria. Then I said that the car meant an either-or choice that required a sacrifice, and Rukkhadevata had to choose between knowledge, people remembering about her, or sacrificing herself and be completely forgotten to save the nation and the entire world. So I basically talked about the ending of the Archon quest without actually realizing it. When it comes to Fontaine, my predictions became a little bit more detailed. In the video called Fontaine, Focalors, Archon Quest, Nation, no leaks, they came out on February 19th, 2023, so 6 months before Fontaine was released. After analyzing every single Hydro enemy's attack, I came out with the idea that Furina's elemental skill was gonna heal or attack on necessity, and that her ult would have involved bubbles, dealing Hydro damage to the enemies, and this turned out to be pretty accurate. I also said that she would have been a dual wielder, which was partially wrong considering she has 2 forms. Then I talked about Fontaine in general, and I mentioned the law suspects during the French Revolution that allowed people to bring anyone to court for basically no reason. They just needed to suspect them without any real proof, and that's how the Opera Epiclès ended up being like. I said that Focalors was acting high and mighty, showing herself as a saint, pure and above anybody else, but she was just trying to convince herself about it. She didn't really want to be the Archon, and that the truth would have been revealed in the Masquerade of the Guilty, when she would have been tried in her own courtroom by her people, just like Queen Marie Antoinette during the French Revolution, and that was also surprisingly spot on. Similarly, her reign would have then ended, only Marie Antoinette was sentenced to death by the guillotine. But obviously there also won't be any deadly ending for the Hydro Archon, differently from what happened in the French Revolution. Well, okay, I might have underestimated the rioters. Lastly, I even said that we would have been brought to court and Neuvillette would have given us a light sentence while Focalors would have influenced the verdict. Now this kinda predicted 2 things. Us defending Lini against Focalors, who was trying to influence the trial to incriminate him, but also Neuvillette's light sentence to send us to investigate the fortress of Murata and find out what happened to Child. When it comes to Natlan instead, first of all, in the Archons video from before, I stated that the Pyro Archon's Goetia name was gonna be Ami, the human-shaped pillar of flame that struck a miniature sun that went supernova, which sounded pretty fitting for the Pyro Archon. In the 5.0 analysis video, I told you that Mavika's Goetia name is Haborim, and that it was an alternative name for Ami, but the Wikipedia page I found that information on was wrong. Haborim is the alternative name for Aim, a demon with 3 heads, 1 human, 1 cat and 1 snake, who carries a torch with which she burns everything in sight while riding a viper. Now I could understand the human and serpent's heads because the Archons are humans, and Xbalanque acquired the ability to be resurrected from the primal fire of the Dragon Sovereign, and if this dragon has something in common with the Sage of the Soul and Flame, one of its descendants, then the Sovereign would be a kind of serpent dragon. As for the cat's head, I don't really know. Genshin Impact has a lot of supernatural cats. In the Night Kingdom we met a cat Night Soul Spirit, and in Simulanka Anders' daughter's cat was responsible for the 3 different versions of the history of the nation, so it could end up meaning something. Anyway, even though I got the wrong name, I was still 100% certain Mavika's name wouldn't have been Phoenix, which is another Goetia name, because although perfectly fitting, it was too obvious. Moving on, in the same Archons video, I also said that in Natlan the people would have had a shadow side of themselves in their subconscious, which is technically what happens in the Night Warden Wars, because the people send their consciousness to the Night Kingdom to fight, even though I still don't understand how that works. Where are the real bodies of the winners of the pilgrimage being kept while their consciousness are fighting, considering that Mavika brings the fallen back to life from inside the sacred flame? Do they enter the flame, which then allows them to split their consciousness from their bodies? Anyway, in that same video, I also said that the tribe of the previous Archon, that back then almost all of us called Murata, enjoyed fighting, so I wonder if we're gonna find out that the Pyro Archon Venti told Vanessa about in the manga was from the Collective of Plany. Then in the video called Natlan Murata, Archon Quest, Nation, No Leaks, that came out on February 26, 2023, a few days after the video about Fontaine, I said that the Pyro Archon would wield a Claymore, and that was honestly beyond obvious. Like in the Archons video, I said that the Pyro Hypostasis, Ayin, means 16, so her tarot card was the 16th one, the Devil, which means letting go of everything that stops you from reaching your goal. And Mavica first let go of her family and life 500 years ago, and then also her Archon powers to defeat the Abyss. This tarot card originally depicted Baphomet, a being worshipped by the Knights Templar, that was both man and woman, like the Pyro Archons throughout history. I then said that the original land of the Aztec, Aztlan, was divided into 7 tribes, and in Natlan there are 6 tribes, although the fact that the Archon has her own banner feels like there are 7 in total. I also said that in the middle of Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztecs, there was the Tlachtli, an area in which there was both the bowl game court and the platform for the sacrifices, and that sounds like the Stadium of the Sacred Flame, which is right in the middle of the entire nation. Digressing a little bit, I just realized something as I was writing the script for this video. The old Aztec capital is called Tenochtitlan, which actually kinda sounds like Ochcanatlan, so maybe that's where they got the Och prefix. Then I talked about the continuous sacrifices that the Aztecs made to give Huitzilopochtli, the god of the sun and war, enough power to prevent the coming of the Infinite Night, which in Natlan is basically what the pilgrimage exists for. The people fight to produce contending fire and pyro energy to keep the sacred flame burning and stop the abyss from invading Natlan. I also expected an overworld, and we got both Hanan Pacha and probably in 5.1 the Ineffable City, but also an underworld, which was the obvious thing to expect since the afterlife is a recurring theme in Mesoamerican cultures. Specifically though, I said that the Aztec warriors had to face multiple challenges in the underworld, and if victorious, they would have joined Huitzilopochtli in his fight and then be reborn as hummingbirds. Sadly, there are no hummingbirds in Natlan, but the concept was almost accurate. In the video called The 7 Samsara Cycles, a Genshin Impact 4.2 Theory, released on December 9th, 2023, I talked about how the Aztecs gods threw themselves into a bonfire to become the next sun, just like the Pyro Archons seem to be doing to ascend to Archonhood. But I also said that the previous worlds in the Aztec mythology were wiped out and that the humans went back to being savages, just like the people of Natlan at the beginning of the history. In that video, I also talked about the Lemurian root cycle from Anthroposophy that, despite the name being almost identical to Lemuria, is more accurate for Natlan, since the mythological nation of Lemuria was destroyed by volcanic eruptions and it existed in an area that went from Africa to Australia, and those cultures were used in Natlan, and that the people used to live in rock cities made out of stone, just like the Children of the Echoes. In my Visions the Virtues of the Elements Genshin Impact 4.3 video released on December 22nd, 2023, I said that the tournament existed to find the strongest human who would have then ascended to Archonhood, and the viewers just couldn't accept that the human could have ever been an Archon. I also said that the previous Archon would have been resurrected inside the winner of the tournament, and I do have a theory that specific Archons, and Mavica is one of them, are reincarnations of Xbalanque, and that these reincarnations appear only when Natlan is about to face a crisis that could destroy the entire nation. Not exactly a confirmed theory, but it sounds feasible with the lore we got in 5.0. In this video, I also said that the Pyrovision holders rely on their inner strength, which is interesting considering how a human becomes an Archon when their inner flame is reignited. And I also said that the Pyro Archon represents temperance, so modesty, humility, abstinence, and restraining an impulse, which fits Mavica perfectly considering the personality she has, as she admits her shortcomings as a human and doesn't use her Archonhood as a means to elevate herself above anybody. Then, in the video called Where Are the Natlan NPCs? Genshin Impact Theory, released on February 23rd, 2024, I said that the people's belief in fight, so the actual fighting, the will to fight, and the audience cheers, would have produced energy just like in the Nerium in Fontaine, and we now know that the warriors of Natlan produce contending fire. I also said that differently from Fontaine, the people of Natlan would have been aware of what their belief would have produced and that they were actively helping keep their nation safe. I said once again that the winner of the tournament would have become the new Pyro Archon, but that there would have been a new Archon almost every 100 years because they're humans, that they would have received the knowledge of their predecessors, and that there might have been 4 major reincarnations among them, that were destined by birth to become the Archons. I also talked about a dragon capable of metamorphosis that ruled over the nation, and to be honest, I don't even remember how I came to that conclusion, but I basically predicted the Sage of the Sullen Flame becoming the Python King. Lastly, in this video I said that we would have met a woman who would have participated in the tournament, that we would have helped training her, and in the end she would have won. Back then I thought this woman was gonna be the future Pyro Archon, but it ended up being Kachina. In The Saurians Gotta Love 'Em All Genshin Impact 5.0 Teaser Analysis, June 3rd, 2024, I talked about the Pyro Archon's reincarnation once again, but I said that the Archon died and came back to life every time a new Samsara cycle began, so at the beginning of a new era in history, which seems to be right so far. Instead, in the Ignition Natlan Teaser Analysis, published on July 16, 2024, I talked about every character that got the ball of the tournament, but now that I think about it, in 5.0 we didn't see Citlali nor Shilonen fight in the pilgrimage, which makes me think that there will be another pilgrimage on one of the next updates and we will see them participate, but we will probably also see Capitano join, which would justify Mavica asking Capitano,
"Are you brave enough to compete?"
But also,
"The champion will take all."
I also talked about the colors being burned and everything being rewound, and curiously it is said that the Python King owned a secret device to defeat the Abyss that is capable of rewinding time. I correctly guessed that Auroron was working with Capitano and that the fighting spirit kept the sacred flame alive, but also that the symbols on the characters' clothes did represent their tribes, reason why I correctly assumed that Shilonen was from the Children of the Echoes, and that Citlali and Auroron came from the Anemo-Saurian tribe, so the Masters of the Nightwind, although I then got confused with Iansan and Chaska. I also figured out that Capitano had some kind of trouble and it seems he doesn't have much longer to live, but what I still don't understand is why they showed a Cucosaur when Mavica appeared behind Capitano. She's from the Science of the Canopy, so why the Cucosaur? Is it just because it's the Pyrosaurian and she's the Pyro Archon? In my Simulanka Spoilered Everything Genshin Impact 4.8 video, and yes, I said spoilered on purpose, I said that Natlan was once ruled by an ancient dragon, the Sovereign of Fire, that the first Pyro Archon stole its powers and Xbalanque used them to be resurrected, that Natlan had been constantly fighting against the dragon throughout its history, and that Mavica wants to defy fate, although after Fontaine, that's what every Archon wants to do now. I said that the original Archon was inside the ball of fire from the teaser and that he had been reborn inside Mavica, and we did hear Xbalanque's voice when Mavica looked at the sun in her consciousness, but also Xbalanque entered the Sacred Flame when he was still alive. And lastly, just like Simei in Simulanka, Mavica needs the heroes to achieve her goal. The last video we're gonna talk about, although very briefly, is Natlan is Madness and I Love It Genshin Impact 5.0 livestream analysis, in which I said that Mavica was the same Archon from the Cataclysm, which turned out to be actually right. As this video is coming to an end, I obviously don't know if I got even more things right, or if everything else I predicted is completely wrong. We can just wait and see. But all things considered, I am now very curious to see how much I got right about Snezhnaya, especially about something the majority of my viewers will never even consider. That is that the Tsaritsa is not the god of love, but the god of peace. I won't dive into it because this is definitely not the right video to do so, but I did make a video called Snezhnaya Nation Tsaritsa Archon Quest No Leaks that came out on March 28, 2023, in which I explain in detail the reasons behind my theory, so if you're interested you can check that out. Another theory I'd like to see being right is about Sandrone actually being Alain Guillotin who turned himself into an automaton, carrying an android version of Marianne in its hand, giving her the chance to live that she didn't have. But once again we will have to go to Snezhnaya to find that out because Sandrone never leaves its workshop. Anyway, even though I changed the name, the logo, the banner and the outro of the channel, the content I'll keep making is always gonna be the same, nothing will change there. I will keep on trying to explain everything, come up with theories, share my usual crazy theory, and then wait and see if I got something right. Considering what this video was about, it doesn't seem I did that bad after all. And that's it, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin Impact or Star Rail Theory videos, consider subscribing. One day I'll probably start making videos about Zenless Zone Zero, but I hope we'll be able to walk around with the characters we own by then, so I'll be able to use Lycon for my videos. The only reason why I haven't made any video yet is that I don't really have a good understanding about New Eridu yet, apart from it looking more and more like the Earth but in yet another universe. One day I'll maybe even make Honkai Impact Theory videos too, who knows? Although, who am I even gonna use there? Oh, maybe the male Yume Obibito. Oh, yeah, I forgot. Anyway, I think this will do for today, so thank you so much for watching. Let's all say goodbye to ShadowX5452 Gaming one last time, and until next time, over and out.